You've just joined the Prepper Broadcasting Network, where we promote self-reliance and independence. The views and opinions expressed are strictly those of the host or their guests. Visit us in the interactive chat room at prepperbroadcasting.com.
Good evening and welcome to Preparing for Life Storms with BexarPrepper. Today is Tuesday, February 12th, 2013, and it's my pleasure to welcome you in tonight. We are on air from 8 to 9 p.m. Central Time every Tuesday on American Preppers Radio, powered by BexarPrepper.com. We broadcast 11 different hosts 7 days a week, so please check out the host tab for more information on shows and times. You can also listen to all previous shows under the host archive. I'd like to take a moment to thank Blog Talk Radio for featuring PrepperBroadcasting.com as their staff pick for tonight's show, and I'd like to welcome in all the new listeners. If you'd like to join us in the chat room, come on over to PrepperBroadcasting.com and click on Listen and Chat at the top of the page. It will then take you to the chat room. Create your name or just accept the default name and come on in. You'll always be in for a treat with some lively chat and very interesting conversation. So tomorrow night, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Time, we have Goat Hollow and the Surreal News, the facts about where our world is heading without the slant. So let's get started with tonight's show. You found this great sale at the store. You got some roast beef and carrots, and you're not sure which method would be your best approach. That's a question that many people have. How do I know which method to utilize for what product? But first, before we make a decision on how we're going to put up whichever particular food we're working on, is to understand the benefits of the process of canning or dehydrating. The benefits of preserving food can be summed up in a simple little list. The dehydration process minimally affects the nutritional value of food. Vitamin A, beta-carotene, and C, carbohydrates, fiber content, potassium, magnesium, and selenium are not altered or lost in dehydration. Calorie values remain the same, but the fat and salt content is reduced. Dehydrated foods are free of additional pesticides and chemicals. You notice I said additional, because if you're growing your own, hopefully you're not adding any of that. But if you're buying them from the farmer's market or from the grocery store, well, at least you're not going to add any additional ones when you preserve them. The canning process, you have pretty much the same benefits, but you maintain the fat and salt content of food. So that's important to remember. Herbs, flowers, vegetables, fruits, and meats can be preserved, stored, and consumed safely for a long period of time. Fresh vegetables, herbs, and fruits do not have to rot in the garden anymore. The bounty produced by your garden or deals at the local farmer's market can be saved and enjoyed at a later date. If you store your food properly, dehydrated food has a longer shelf life than any other preservation method. If properly sealed and left unopened, dehydrated foods can sit on your shelf for at least 15 to 30 years. Now, in one of the previous shows, we talked about how they found foods that were very, very old and they were still good, both in canned and dehydrated forms. So it's all about following the process and getting it right in the first place. Canned foods can sit on your shelf just as long, but it's important to understand that after about 8 to 10 years, your texture can change. I've found that mostly in meat. They'll soften a little more, and soften a little more, and soften a little more over the years. But that process usually doesn't start till at least 8 years in a not-so-well-controlled temperature and can extend upward. Dehydrated foods take space in your pantry or cupboard because they are not stored in spoilage-prone cans, jars, or bottles, and they take up much less space. Dehydration is less labor and time-consuming than canning. You can actually take your little bit of leftovers and just dehydrate them right there so you can work in smaller batches without wasting energy. You don't have to purchase any special equipment, whereas with canning, you've got to purchase the jars and the lids and the rings. If you're canning low-acid foods, you've got to have a pressure canner. In the olden days, yes, they did can without a pressure canner, and if the worst-case scenario happens and you're out there and you got this deer, if that's what you have to do to preserve that deer, then yes, do it. But otherwise, get yourself a canner and let's do it right the first time. So 10 years down the road, when something bad happens and you've been one of those slackers that hasn't rotated your food as you should, then at least what you have on your shelf is still going to be edible and not end up killing you. Forget the processed store-bought jars of herbs and spices. Dehydrating your own fresh herbs and spices gives your favorite recipes an enhanced potent flavor that the commercial products just cannot compete with. You know, when you take it right off the vine and put it in your dehydrator, there is nothing near as fresh. Imagine all the time and all the truck travel and all the hands that have to go into herbs that are harvested in California, finally jarred up. And you know those herbs that are jarred up, it's all the stems, it's all the bits and pieces. It's just a lot of stuff, a little bit of bugs thrown in here and there. So you just can't beat it. Dehydrating foods is the cheapest way to build your food storage pantry because of the startup cost. You can dehydrate in your oven. You can put it in your car. You can put it in a solar oven. There are just so many options that you can do. You can just put it on screens and set it in your backyard. I say screens because you don't want the bugs flying on everything. Canning is a very powerful connection to the past, to culture, family, and heritage. You think knitters are passionate about their crafts. People who are serious about putting food in jars are more than a worthy rival. We're fortunate to have a handful of ardent home canners who share their love of home canning on their YouTube channels. They help us remember that the experience of opening a jar of cherry preserves in January is more than just practical. It's transporting. Nothing says I love you quite like a jar of homemade plum preserves. Come Christmas time, home canners have the upper hand in gift-giving department. As a well-stocked pantry of jams, jellies, and pickles, ensure you have a solid backup plan to cover everyone on your list. It is not personal preference. It is not self-delusion. No commercially canned product tastes as good as locally grown, harvested in season, homemade preserves. It is deeply rewarding to select your own produce, ensuring top quality to can at its peak of ripeness. You can bet your bottom dollar that the flavor of your home canned product will mirror the quality and care that went into making it. So, how do we make the decision on whether to dehydrate or can? Some foods just aren't good candidates for dehydrating, and others aren't all that good for canning. So let's talk about some specific foods. And at this moment in time, I'd like to invite all of you to call into the show and offer your ideas or your questions about that. The phone number is 347-202-0228. And while we're doing that, I'm going to take a moment break here, and we're going to hear from our sponsors that make this great show possible.
Hey, I'm Frank Bates. I just created a free video at survivewithsolar.com that exposes the electricity monopolies and the government for what they really are, incompetent, lying crooks that are counting on your fear to keep your power bills criminally high. My video at survivewithsolar.com exposes the truth and shows you the secret of how I beat them and how you can beat them too. Go to survivewithsolar.com and discover one weird trick to slash your power bill and protect your home before they make me shut it down. Again, that's survivewithsolar.com.
Tonight's broadcast brought to you in part by Joe and Amy Alton, the authors of the #1 Amazon bestseller, The Doom and Bloom Survival Medicine Handbook. See their articles in Backwoods Home, Survivalist, Self-Reliance Illustrated, and Survival Quarterly magazines. Visit Joe and Amy's website at www.doomandbloom.net.
Okay, we've got it looks like a couple of questions in chat. We'll see if someone in there has the answer. I have not. The question is, has anyone looked into retort pouch canning? And no, I have not. The cost of being able to do that is just not something that I feel is necessary at this point in time. And freeze-dried, that equipment is really expensive. If you're going to do it for big, huge groups, it might be an awesome expense. But for your everyday canner, it's just a little bit out of most of our price ranges. So, as we were saying before, our sponsors, so how do we make the decision on whether to dehydrate or can? And let's talk about some special foods. I know you hear about people dehydrating the meat all the time. Yeah, for short term, 1 year or less. And you've got to use the leanest meat possible. You know, I wouldn't want to be the one relying on that in a time of crisis. Canned meats are wonderful to have on hand, and through practice, you will learn how to alter the textures by size and pre-treatment to find the texture and size that your family likes the best. You know, we hear a lot of negatives about ground beef and how it smells when it comes out of a jar. Well, just about all your meat smells a little different when it comes out of the jar, and that's because of the fats and the skins and all that kind of stuff that's in the meat. But open that can up and heat it up or mix it in your chicken salad, and you will never taste meat that doesn't taste, that tastes any better. It is just a wonderful flavor. Yeah, it looks yucky on the shelf. I agree, 100%. But it is wonderful flavor, and I think everybody should have canned meat on their shelves. It makes your life a whole lot easier. You know, most of my meals that I do are quickie meals, and the way I do that is I can specific things. I can chili without beans. I can spaghetti sauce. I can my chicken, my beef, and I shred it in advance before I jar it. Hamburger. And then when it's time to eat, I can just pull off my dehydrated vegetables and my meat, throw it all together, and I've got an awesome meal. If I'm in a really big hurry, then I pull out my freeze-dried. It's much quicker than going to a fast food restaurant. But the key is to practice with it. Try things both ways, you know. Dehydrate something and can it and see what you think of the differences. Don't rely on what everyone else is saying. Now, Una Queen Pa asks, Bear, do you prefer dry canning ground beef or adding liquid? My process is, if the meat is raw, which means it can be slightly browned, then I do not add liquid. If it is cooked, I add liquid. I do not cook it and leave it dry. That is a short-term item. I know I'm going to have lots of people arguing with me on this, and I understand. 1-2 years, absolutely, you've got a decent product. But for long-term, and I'm a long-term kind of gal, if I can't keep it on my shelf for at least 5 years, then it is just too much trouble for me to consider it my food storage. So please, folks, test for yourselves how long that lasts, and don't just go by smell, go by taste. Watch how your stomach feels after you eat it. Botulism is very hard to get. Someone was talking about botulism when they used to not use a pressure canner, and there were all these cases. There was probably a dozen cases in the last, 60, 70 years. Well, what's interesting about that is how many cases have we heard about in the last 2 or 3 years? And it's not that any of the processes were necessarily bad. It's that the individuals doing the processes didn't follow the rules. And they didn't check their food. They didn't rotate it. They didn't do the things they needed to do. They canned without water. It's only as good as what you put into it. Because dehydrated lasts as long as freeze-dried from Autumn Prepper. Yeah, it lasts longer than freeze-dried in my book. When you put your freeze-dried, once you open the can, in about a year, you're going to see some color differences that are going to be astronomical. And if I can't use it in a year, then I throw it out. So, whereas with dehydrated, I can keep it in a jar for as long as I want, and it's perfectly fine. It looks like we have Paula in the queue. Hey, Paula, come on in. Paula's got a YouTube channel. Hi. She's got a YouTube channel. It's called Alan2045. And, folks, when you call him, if you have a YouTube channel, feel free to share it. And she does some great canning, dehydrating videos, and cooking with her food. So what's your question or what's your advice tonight, Paula?
Like the differences between dehydrators. Some people can't afford like the Excalibur, and they have different sizes. One, like 9 tray, I would suggest, you can try out the cheaper ones like the Nesco or the round ones. That way you can add up to like 10, 20 trays to them. And, the timers, like I do believe the Excaliburs have the timers on them. But if you buy a timer that you plug in, you can plug your dehydrator into that and set it when you want it to begin and when you want it to stop.
Yeah, and that's, if you think about it, Paula, that's better because that's one less thing to go wrong on your dehydrator.
Right.
If you have a separate timer. And, I don't think there's a whole lot of different. I love my Excalibur. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it. It dries evenly. It dries quicker than the Nesco or American Harvest. You don't have to rotate the tray. But it's all about cost. If you're on a low budget, then, get your little Nesco. So you got to spend a few more minutes rotating trays and stuff, right?
Right. And somebody said it doesn't take that much juice to power them. It's like maybe somebody did a review, checked their utility bills or their wattage, and they said it was like maybe 25 cents a day or something, and that was going like 24, 48 hours.
Yeah,
and you have your ceiling fan. You have your computer running for that long anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my bill, when I was at my peak of dehydrating every day, all day, 24/7, I did that for an entire month to see what my dehydrator would pull. Now, my American Harvest did pull more, but I also had like 18 trays, and my Excalibur had 9 trays. And my bill for my Excalibur went up $7, and my bill for my American Harvest went up, I think it was almost $11. So that's a cheap way to preserve your food. And, you know, like you were doing your green beans, you could have just blanched those and thrown them on your dehydrator, too.
Yeah, I was going to do that, and I thought, oh, screw it. I mean, forget it.
It's such an
I am going to start doing more vegetables. I want to do hash browns, the kind you can buy at the store, because I don't want to shred my own. I figure just buy the cheap ones and put those in there, and then put them either in a jar, or you can you put those like in a plastic bag and put them in a Mylar, because they kind of, if they get pokey, they might puncture your Mylar bag.
If you got a decent Mylar bag, you're not going to have any problem. They are not that pokey. They really aren't, but they're so thin and they dehydrate so small, they flatten really well. And that's how I do mine. I do the frozen hash browns and dehydrate those, because you don't have to do anything with them. You know, isn't it next month that they have their freezer frozen food sale? I think is when they have it next month. Any of you couponers would know that.
I think so, because they have freezers at my local grocery store. They're starting to put them at, the chest freezers.
Yeah.
They're having them on sale, so something's coming up.
Yeah, I think it's the vegetable time. Now that would be the perfect time to go out and buy a basket full of frozen vegetables and hash browns and tater tots, folks. Don't forget the tater tots. Yum, good. And just buy them all, because they're like, I think they normally go like 69 cents a 1 pound bag, something like that, or $1 a 1 pound bag, and throw those on your dehydrator, and you got your supply done.
Yeah, and like, you were saying about the Mylar bags, you get what you pay for. If you get the like really cheapy ones, but if you invest a little bit more and get that more ply or whatever that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Jars.
And don't forget, folks, if you've got a bug-ridden area, put it in buckets or tubs or something like that, because those critters can eat through that Mylar. They can actually eat through your buckets too, but it takes a little longer, so you can usually see evidence of that. Whereas those little mealy bugs, you don't see them until it's too late.
Okay, dear, thanks for taking my call, and I'm going back in the chat room and listening to everybody else and listen to you.
Thanks, Paula, for calling in, folks. Don't forget, it's Alan2045 on YouTube. Okay, what foods do not dehydrate well? It depends on your taste. I do not like dehydrated meat, chicken especially. Oh, chicken, when you rehydrate it, it's like splinters. It does not rehydrate very well, and I've tried that. If you don't blanch your foods first, you tend to not have a really good rehydratable product. It takes a whole lot longer, so it's important to blanch your foods, and a lot of people don't do that. And it really helps a lot. Now, there's some foods that you never want to blanch, like mushrooms. You really don't want to blanch those. They just get darker. It doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't hurt them, but it's kind of like that. So how long does fruit leather store? Vapin Realtor. We got some great questions coming from the chat room. Fruit leather stores just as long as anything else. It depends on how you package it. If you package it appropriately, it'll store for very, very long. It will get darker, and it will get drier. But you want to make sure when you do your fruit leather that it's nice and dry when you do. What I like to do is I take it and I dry it, and then I roll it up on saran wrap, and I leave it loosely rolled, and then I dehydrate it a little longer. And that way it can be long-term storage. So, folks, if you want to call into the show, we'd love to hear your voice. It's 347-202-0228. And those of you listening in on Blog Talk, come on over and join us in the chat room at PrepperBroadcasting.com. Just click on the Listen and Chat at the top of the page, and then you scroll down and you see where you can log into the chat room. All right, so carrots. Let's do an example of carrots. Carrots you can dehydrate. I always dehydrate my carrots. I do not waste my shelf space or weight with carrots because they rehydrate beautifully. You know those little teeny tiny carrots that your kids love to munch on? That is an amazing carrot to dehydrate. And when it rehydrates, it looks just like it did when you put it in there. It looks like we've got Grandma Linda from Ontario, Canada in the queue. Hey, Grandma, come on in. Or do you want to be called Linda?
Either one will do. I've gone through life being Sir, Mom, Grandma, Grandma Linda, Gamma Fine.
Hey, I get Sir all the time because my voice is so deep. Ever since I was knee-high to a cricket's butt.
I got Sir because when I was at that age, boys all had long hair. I've got naturally curly hair. It doesn't grow. So I was Sir.
Oh, too funny. So what do you want to offer tonight, or what's your question?
I dehydrate almost everything. I canned a few carrots, but my husband prefers the dehydrated ones.
There you go.
He says they don't go mushy.
Exactly. They say
but
nice and crisp.
I can a lot of meat. I have canned mincemeat from all my green tomatoes because north shore of Superior doesn't get enough sun. And
I'm going to do that next year.
Pardon?
I'm going to do that next year because this year I made piccalilli out of them.
Yeah, I was looking at that after I used up all my tomatoes making mincemeat. But the mincemeat is good. I started off with about 25 jars of it, and I'm down to, I think I've got 12. Hopefully they'll last me till tomato season again. But I've canned pears, I've canned pumpkin pickles, and I use Splenda or no sugar because my husband's diabetic.
Oh, nice.
And so all my stuff is diabetic friendly.
Wonderful.
I can chicken, meat, and if we go bear hunting this year, I'll try canning some bear meat. But I started watching Linda's Pantry, then I found you, and the first picture I saw of you, you looked so much like my sister who passed away on me 2 years ago. It's like talking to my sister. You have the same long hair, and you're just part of my family now.
Oh, thank you so much. And that means a lot to me because I do this for people like you. I do this for everyone out there because I think it's important that we all have this knowledge. And I don't want it to die with me. And I don't want people that are doing this to feel so isolated. You know, like they're all by themselves doing this canning and prepping, and they're all alone. And
well, the little town I live in, people look at me like I'm nuts. I go in and I buy meat when it's on sale, and they look at me because I've got like 10 chickens, and when the meat is marked down 30%, I pick up almost every roast going, and they're going, there's only 2 of you. What are you doing? I said, making Christmas gifts.
There you go. Hey, Grandma, someone from the chat room is asking a question. I'm going to let you answer this. Bobby wants to know, is there any meat in mincemeat?
No. Mine has green tomatoes, raisins, and since I use Splenda, it's got Splenda, but it's got sugar, and that's about it.
There you go. Yeah, that's going to be mine next year.
I've got a YouTube channel. It's Grandma Linda, and I'm going to start doing diabetic recipes, like low carbs that normal people can actually use without buying all the ingredients. And I'm going to do a lot of recipes that are diabetic friendly.
Oh, that would be
wonderful. It seems to be a need for it. Yeah, that's missing.
Absolutely. I get those kind of questions all the time, and to have somebody I could send them to would be awesome because I don't can diabetically. And so, you know, I don't know what the measurements would be for the low sweetener and all of that. So that would be wonderful. I think it's something that's really needed out there on YouTube. So
yeah, as soon as I get my teeth back, in the last 3 weeks I've had 3 abscessed teeth and 2 just fell out this morning. I woke up with the gold crown and my teeth in my mouth, but not where they were supposed to be. So as soon as I get teeth and can smile again, the videos will start.
Well, you can always start like I did and don't show your face.
I talk to people when I'm canning, so I just can't do it without showing me. And my husband's got the video camera, and he likes to show me off for some unknown reason, even though I'm fat, old, and ugly. I smile a lot. But I will get the channel up in another couple of weeks, and I'll start the diabetic
wonderful.
things.
Would you send me an email to let me know when it's up? And I
will do that.
Know. Wonderful.
Okay, then.
Thank you so much for calling in. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Folks, that's Grandma Linda, and she'll be coming online with her diabetic YouTube in the next couple of weeks. Looks like we've got VM in the queue. Hey, VM, good to hear from you again. How are you this evening?
I'm doing good, thank you. I just wanted to know what's better, the Excel or the Harvester?
You mean the Excalibur or the Harvester? I used the Sun Harvest. That's okay. I used the Sun Harvest for 30 years, and I didn't have any issues with it. And then I bought the Excalibur, and I would never go back. I love the Excalibur. It's great for busy people.
What's the difference between the two?
Well, the Sun Harvester and Nesco have center air, so there's a hole in the center, so the air comes up from the bottom, and so it's not even. So you have to rotate your trays to get them to dry evenly. The Excalibur, the air blows in from the back across the trays, and so it flows across them evenly. And so things dry really evenly. You don't have to rotate them 99% of the time. You don't have to flip the fruit over like you do in the Sun Harvest and the Nesco. It's just, it takes less time, less of your time, but it is more expensive. It's quite a price difference. We're talking, I think it's like $150 more expensive for the Excalibur than it is for the Sun Harvest or the Nesco.
All right, so you are recommending the Excalibur whenever, if you can afford it?
Absolutely. I love the Excalibur.
All right, thank you.
So what's your YouTube channel, VM?
I don't have one.
Okay. I thought you did. I guess you're not doing videos yet, huh?
Nope, not yet.
We'll get you on soon. VM's one of our youngest here, and he's an awesome young man, and he's learning all he can. Thank you, VM, for calling in.
Yep, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Una Queen Pa has asked, how do you rehydrate? Slowly, no. It all depends on how you've dehydrated it. Like if you're doing green beans, let's say, and you just put them on your dehydrator, or you just quickly blanch them. When you go to rehydrate those, you're going to need hot water for at least 5 minutes, maybe a little longer. If you were to blanch those for 5 minutes instead of 1 or 2, then you would need a whole lot less time, and you can rehydrate them with cold water easier. I tend to make quick meals, so I tend to blanch mine a little longer so that they rehydrate faster. It breaks down the shell or the actual vegetable. I'm not very great with terminology there, but it breaks it down a little better so the water can absorb quicker and dissipate quicker. So they dehydrate faster and they rehydrate faster. All right. So it looks like we have Genius in Exile in the queue. Hey, G, are you there?
I'm here. How are you doing?
Great. Genius in Exile has a YouTube channel, and she's like the soap queen, and she dehydrates in cans, and she's taught me a few things. So how are you? So what's up with what question would you like to ask? I'm stumbling over my tongue right now.
Well, first of all, it's an honor to have taught you something. Thank you. But I was actually going over some of my videos and looking at some of the questions that have been asked on some of them, and I wanted to bring them up, in case somebody hadn't thought of them yet, or, if one person's asked these questions, maybe others have.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. Headspace rules and canning. I want to talk about, how important those are for certain things. Some things have to have like a big headspace, like maybe your meatloaf. You have a 1 inch on there, but cranberry is just a 1/4 of an inch. So, there's a lot of rules as far as, canning and what it is you're canning. But is there any kind of rule of thumb as far as headspace?
Well, it's not a rule. I'm not sure how to put that. Meat requires 1 inch. Vegetables normally require a 1/2 inch. And jams and jellies normally require a 1/4 inch. Now, there are variations depending on what it is. Like cabbage, that's a vegetable, and you're going to do that a 1/2 inch, but that's pretty much the guidelines I go by.
Okay. I know there's a lot of new canners out there, so I wanted to ask some things. Canning substitutions. I looked on your canning meatloaf video, and there are a few people saying, they want to use croutons instead of crackers, or they put oatmeal in their meatloaf, and, how should they reduce those? So is there any kind of rule of thumb on that, or how would you approach canning substitutions? I guess depending on what you're substituting and what you're substituting it with.
Right. Well, one of the things you're not supposed to can with is flour, breads, crackers, that kind of thing. And so when you are using them, like in my meatloaf, you've got to use them minimally. I mean, I think I did 10 pounds of meatloaf, and we only used 1 cup of crackers. So you would only use 1 cup of oatmeal. That is so minimal, and it'll disperse in the meat that it won't affect the density in allowing the pressure canner to penetrate that meat. And you don't want to pack it either, because the density of the product, you've got to be able to get that as hot as it possibly can in the center. And for like the meatloaf, I put a dip in the center so that the center of the meat is closer to the surface, so that I don't have that density problem. You forget one of those, and your meatloaf may not last you. But the good news is, when it goes bad, you're going to know it's gone bad.
Yes.
It's going to blow that lid, and it's going to turn slowly black.
Oh, yuck. Okay, so what exactly is the problem with using bread products in your canning?
They separate, and they clump, and they don't allow the penetration. It's almost like they become like a paper, and it stops the penetration, so you don't want to do that. It just won't allow the heat to get up. And like for pie fillings and those kind of things, it'll actually go into little balls and separate, so you'll have liquid and balls wherever the flour was. So that's why you want to use that clear gel, or what's the other name of that? You know that. ThermFlow. You can use one of those instead, and they're really great to have on hand.
Oh, yeah, I just ordered 5 big packages, so I'm ready. I'm ready for when the peaches come out. Okay.
I bet.
Let's see. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Oh, wait, we had a question in the chat room, and it was about green beans. Steam Punkener asked, when I dehydrated them, they got tiny. I saw at the farmer's market someone had some, and they were nice and big. Did I cook them too long? When you dehydrated them, they do get tiny. They get very tiny. If they didn't get tiny, either they were a different type of green bean, or they didn't dehydrate them long enough, because they should get pretty small. I mean, you should be able to put, about a 1 pound green bean in maybe 1/4 of a quart jar?
Mm-hmm. I mean, they do have the 2 varieties. They have the Haricovere and then the Italian flat. So they also have to keep in mind, like you said, what kind.
Right, because it's going to be different. And I just think that's funny that you know the names of all of these. I get the CRS disease, so that kind of stuff just floats right out of my brain. So, but Genius in Exile, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it, and you have a wonderful evening. And folks, don't forget, check out Genius in Exile on YouTube.
Thank
you. Great
you.
channel there. Good night,
wonderful show.
Thank you. Okay, so tomatoes. Let's talk a little bit about tomatoes. Nothing is better than some tomato powder that you dehydrated and tomato sauce. Sure, you can use tomato powder to create tomato sauce, but it's just not the same as canning them fresh. So same thing with your jellies and jams and preserves. It's just really nice to have some on your shelf all ready to go. Even though you can take your dehydrated fruits and you can make yourself some jelly and jam, you know, it's just nice to have that option. And let's see, you really need to try everything both ways because it's really hard to tell what you're going to like. I know some people that can't stand dehydrated peas. Me. But, you know, so I buy the freeze-dried because I know I just don't like them. And so why would I put something on my shelf that I don't like? So you really need to experiment with it. Someone asked a question earlier about waxing cheese. And, yes, there is a video out there on how to wax cheese. And, yes, it was oozing and dripping. That happens sometimes. Some cheeses are more moist than others. And so you really need to let them dry. So if you're going to be letting them dry enough so that you can wax them, you want to go for the bigger blocks. You don't want to do the little 1-pound blocks. I have had the worst trouble with the little 1-pound blocks, with them seeping. So go big or go home or buy yourself some freeze-dried cheese, which is not bad at all, or get some Velveeta. You can store that on your shelf for 3 years without an issue. I know the label says best used by 2 years, but you can store it for 3 years. So those are other options. You know, take your powdered milk and make yourself some mozzarella. Nothing is better than having a party, a dinner party, and it's time for dinner, and you're pulling your mozzarella and serving it to them fresh. 10-minute job, folks. Try it. Okay, it looks like we have Pet Prepper in queue. Pet Prepper is also a fellow YouTuber, just like it sounds, Pet Prepper. Hey, Pet Prepper, come on in.
Hey there.
Hey, how are you this evening?
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a good show tonight.
It is a good show. Lots of callers.
Yeah. So what do you got for us?
Well, we were all talking, you know, in the chat room, and you guys were talking about the Excalibur and how much more expensive it is. And I lost sound for a long time, so I don't know if it was brought up, but I just started looking up Excaliburs, and I found a refurbished one with a warranty for a lot less than I found the new ones for. So, and I think I just went to, you know, I can't read it because I can't find my glasses and it's so tiny, but I think I just looked up Excaliburs, and then you just look for the refurbished ones. So, you know, that could save some people some money if they're looking to get one.
Yeah, and you know what? Just so you know, mine is a refurbished. That's what I ended up getting. Yeah. And
yeah, I think you're the one that told me.
It's kind of hard to find on their site, but you can find it. Just keep looking.
Yeah. And, you know, about the dehydrated versus canned, I've canned vegetables and, you know, like potatoes and green beans and all, or peppers and all that kind of stuff. You know, like a lot of people said, they just seem to get soggier. If you dehydrate them, it takes up less space. You know, they shrink up so you can get more in a package. I like to go dehydrated, and it saves on canning jars. So, you know, that's just my little take on it. But
Yeah, I'm the same way. I tend to do vegetables besides tomatoes. I love my canned tomatoes. And Jim in Texas asked in the chat room, do you like to hot pack or cold pack your tomatoes? I like to cold pack my tomatoes, but I hot pack my chili and my tomato sauce and that kind of thing. Yeah, there's nothing better than getting your tomatoes and opening that jar and having those fresh tomatoes. Folks, they do not taste anything like those tin can ones. You have no canny taste.
Well, and they're so much better for you, too. There's a lot less, crap in them, so.
Well, that's if you're growing your own. Now, folks, if you aren't growing your own, you need to start. Get you some buckets, put them in the backyard. Just put a pile of dirt and just throw, what is it, the lasagna garden in it or your Three Sisters garden. And then you have something you can can or dehydrate that you know is really good for you. Right?
Right. And you know it came from, and you did all that work, so it's just much more enjoyable, to eat it, and I don't know. I love it.
Yeah. The flavor is non-comparable. It just really is. I hated tomatoes forever, and even though I've had a garden most of my life, I refused to eat fresh tomatoes. I just did. I got so used to the store ones that I just would not even taste one. I was like, no, I don't like tomatoes.
I don't either. I like the canned ones, though.
Since I started growing my own, I said, you know what? I'm putting all this stuff up, and I'm telling people how to do all this, and I won't even eat my own tomato. So I started eating my own tomatoes. Oh, my goodness. They don't have that acidy taste and that bite that gives you the indigestion. It's just so totally different.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
You're going to grow things this year to dehydrate, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, if my chickens don't and my pigs don't get out and eat the garden again. But, just basically everything. I just try a little bit of everything. I think I'm going to try marshmallow root this year for the first time. So that'll be my new thing. I tried kidney beans and, a couple black beans and whatever last year, and they did wonderfully. And I didn't even know you could just grow them, but, yeah.
Very nice. Hey, I just want to take a moment to remind everybody, if you're listening in on Blog Talk, you're really missing some great chat and a lot of information going through this chat room. So come on over to PrepperBroadcasting.com and click on the listen and chat and join us in the chat room. So, yeah, it's flowing like crazy in there tonight. A lot of great information. But so what else great information you got for us? Because, Pat does canning and dehydrating videos, too, and she's the one trying to get a bear. We're hoping next year she gets a bear.
I know.
She can show us how to do it.
I tried. Well, I tried pretty hard this year. Last year I went at it a lot harder, but we got some pictures on the game cam, but not any when I was out there. And then the raccoons ate all the bait, so I don't know why. I just have issues.
Well, hey, Pat, we got a question in the chat room. Someone wants to talk about tattlers, water dead. Do you use tattlers too?
Well, I've used them a couple times, and I must have done something wrong the last time. I made a big batch of salsa, and I had, I probably had like 15 pints, and 3 of them didn't seal. So I think they take a little bit of practice, and you really have to read the directions and know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're going to have some fails. But, yeah, I don't know. And wasn't it? What was that?
Yeah.
What was that video? Was that Jeep, 1952 Jeep?
Yeah.
Just did a video the other day.
You know what I've found, though, with any canning, but especially with the tattlers, the tension on the jar lid is kind of important. Men tend to over-tighten, so even with the backing off a quarter of an inch, they tend to over-tighten, whereas women tend to under-tighten, and so backing off a quarter inch can lead to non-seals.
Okay.
So,
well, that lid tightener, that ball lid tightener,
Yeah.
Do you think that would work good for the tattlers? I mean,
you know what? I would probably, if I were to use that lid tightener, I would back it off 1/4 of an inch.
Okay.
Is what I would do, because that actually does it a little different. Because when I do my tattlers, I do not put as much pressure on them as I do my regular canning lids, because there's less rubber in the regular canning lids and there's more rubber in the tattlers. And then the important thing that everybody forgets is you've got to tighten that ring back down immediately when you pull them out. Don't let it sit there for 5 minutes for it cool down with the tattler on. It'll be too late. You need to tighten them back up, because when that rubber sucks in, they loosen a lot. And so you've got to get that seal back on there before you pull them, and let them sit in the air and watch it go pop on you.
Okay.
So I've only had one failure on a tattler lid, and when I pulled it off, there was a piece of food. And that's the only failure I've had. Now, he had some tattler lids that were not concave before he even started.
Oh, okay. Okay, I remember he said that in there, too, but that was scary. I was like, oh, my gosh.
Well,
yeah, I think maybe I just forgot to tighten them again, is maybe why.
Your ball lids, your tattler lids, you need to inspect them for any little ridges, inspect your rubber, you got to do the same thing for both of them. And your jars, make sure you don't have any ridges, because I've noticed that some of the jars that are coming out with now, they're made a little cheaper. And so you really need to check that top rim now. As the economy goes higher on inflation, in order for them to keep selling us the products at the same prices, they've changed their quality. Okay. And so you really need to start looking at those things.
Well, I would like to start with using the tattlers more, because you can use them over and over. So We Tree keeps putting the same question, and that's pretty much what we're talking about, is the tattler pros and cons. But, that's the one thing. You don't have to stock up as much on lids as you do if you're going to be using the tattlers, because you can keep using them over.
Right, and start watching those sales, because tattlers do go on sale. I got 400 tattlers for $88.
Wow.
For 400. So,
nice.
And I had gotten 144 prior to that for $144. So, that was a great deal.
Really good deal, yeah. Yeah.
So just keep your eyes open and be prepared to snatch them fast when they come up. And they do announce it a lot of times on their Facebook page. So subscribe to their Facebook page so you can get those quick deals.
Back on Facebook.
Well, it looks like we've got someone else in queue, so I'm going to have to let you go, Beth. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thanks, Bear, for taking the call.
Absolutely. And, folks, don't forget Pet Prepper on YouTube. And it looks like we got Prepper Chickie in the queue. Hey, Prepper Chickie, come on in. And Prepper Chickie also has a YouTube channel. Just like it sounds, Prepper Chickie.
Hi, Bear. How are you?
Good. How are you this evening?
Good. I was just going to say that right now is a good time to stock up on fish during the Lent season, when Lent's coming up. If you want to can fish, or just because it's on sale, like you were saying, with the coupon people.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say that she's the coupon queen. And when is that vegetable sale, the frozen vegetables? Did we miss it, or is it coming up?
Oh, no. Anytime there's a holiday coming up, you can usually get deals on veggies, like Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving. What's coming up? Easter.
Nothing. Yeah, I guess Easter, but that's not until March or April.
I can't remember when it is.
Me neither.
Changes every year, don't it?
Yeah, see, I don't eat fish, so I don't care about fish.
Well, I just noticed that, Lent's coming up. I mean, they'll start putting that on sale, but if anybody wants to can or dehydrate it.
Yeah, well, it cans beautifully, absolutely beautifully, and if you leave it in thicker slices, it won't shred apart on you when you go to pull it out of the jar. And folks, use the wide mouth jars. Pipe wide mouth are the best because everything just pours right out of them. You don't tear nothing up. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't want to shred it, don't use the small mouth jars.
I did meatloaf in a quart jar, and you have to quarter it to get it out of there. But since there's only 3 of us, we each got a quarter, and there was a quarter left over, so it worked. But it's nicer when you can just slide it out and slice it, you know?
Right. And a lot of people that have smokers, can't you smoke your fish? And
oh, yeah.
And, I mean, can't you keep it dry or something that way?
Yeah, but it's, like I said, that's short term. That's 1-2 years maximum on any of that. But that's not bad if you're the person, you know, if you're an eater of fish or an eater of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Or salsa.
So okay.
Yeah.
That was my 2 cents.
Well, thank you for calling in. It looks like have a great evening. That's Prepper Chicky on YouTube. We got 3 minutes, so I'm going to have to close out the show here, and I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight, and I will see you a week from this Tuesday, February 19th at 8 p.m. Central Time, when we'll be talking to Sabago Steve from YouTube. He has a working farm and is focused on self-sufficiency. He raises what he lives on and takes us along the way. We can learn what it takes to raise animals for food or work. How much space do you need? So are you planning on raising chickens for eggs or meat? What about cows for work or beef? Don't forget hogs to round out your perfect pantry. Steve has them all, and he can help us avoid the pitfalls that novices make. So come along with us as we learn about this and so much more. You can find more from me on YouTube and on Facebook, also here every Tuesday. Thank you for spending your valuable time with me. Good night and blessings.
Today's broadcast has come to you through the courtesy of the Prepper Broadcasting Network. See our hosts, show schedules, archived programs, and more at prepperbroadcasting.com. Thanks for listening.